In our last Flourish After 50 podcast, I interviewed Jane Moffat, who recently published her book, What's Next? The Savvy Woman's Guide to Redefining Retirement, where she describes a 6-part strategy to designing your retirement, combating old ageist ideas about retirement and designing it around what really matters to you on your terms. And today's episode, we're going to take that one step further. And we're going to get real about what it looks like on the inside of this experience. And I'm really pleased today to be joined by Kathy Wood to have this conversation. Before we begin, I want to remind listeners that the July topic for the Flourish After 50 Circle will be these conversations with Kathy and with Jane, where we'll get into exploring, pulling apart and putting back together these episodes and what they really mean for you. So if you're interested in a monthly discussion group with other women just like you, check out the show notes where you'll see all the information. So let me come back to Kathy. After a long career in human services, she resigned from her long-held position at Relationships Australia in September 2024. She'd been with the organisation for 15 years, with the last 4 of these being part-time in leadership roles. And as she went through the process of leaving, she was so struck by her own and others' varying responses to this change and the assumptions and judgments and challenges many people face, alongside the possibilities for growth. She began her own blog. And here she describes the process of her own personal journey during this transition over the last 18 months and explores the new openings she's experienced alongside the things that she's kept going in her life, and she reflects on what it really means for her and others in their 70s and 80s. Kathy, welcome.
Thanks so much, Sue, and I'm really looking forward to our chat today.
Can you take us back to September 2024 and what was going on for you at that time?
Well, in that September, I was going to be heading over to the UK because my daughter was having her 3rd little baby, and I was going over there and, in fact, was going over for at least 3 months. So I had, perhaps for a good 6 to 9 months, started thinking that that was quite a good demarcation point for me finishing up with the organisation, and I think I just held to that was the case. I had been really very fortunate in the organisation I'd been working for a number of years, that I had an incredibly supportive and just highly respectful CEO who was very prepared to support and even promote my transitioning from having been really involved in the organisation to just moving on and moving out. But that also meant it was kind of known for 6 months that I was going, and I didn't find that got in the way of how people regarded me or the work that I was doing. And there were a few things I really wanted to finish, and the organisation wanted me to finish anyway. So look, it just felt like I was there right up until I wasn't there. And then for me, knowing that structure and doing things and achieving things is a bit of my makeup, and that I had some of my identity and image linked to the work that I was doing, I realised for myself that this substantial break was probably something I really needed to really put me into a whole different context, and for that to happen. And in fact, it wasn't just 3 months. It ended up being over 4 months I was there. And I think for me, that ended up being a very constructive way for me just shifting to another way of being, of operating, a new phase. It really, it just created some clear demarcation points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the episode the last episode with Jane, she talked about the finishing well, and it sounds like you had a sense of a decision that you were making and that you let people know. I also noticed that you had worked part-time for the last 4 years that you were there. Were you seeing yourself on a pathway to finishing? Was that part of the
Yeah.
conversation there?
Yeah. Yeah. And look, some of that had been brought on by stepping into a grandparenting setup, and I really wanted to make the most of being in that role of grandparent as well, which meant that I did want to commit a regular time every week to looking after what's now emerged as 8 grandchildren. But at the time, I thought, no, I want to do that. I want to commit to that. I will pull back from full-time work, and this is going to be the beginning of a pathway. And again, I have to say that the organisation was really very supportive of me doing that, and for me, I was then allocated another role within the organisation, which I found really stimulating. And it was about also then, actually setting up something within the organisation. So there was something finite about it as well. But the other really important thing for me, having been there for a while, was putting in place some succession planning as well. And so that, I actually really quite enjoyed some of the mentoring that went alongside of that, and really have picked up and continued some mentoring, going forward, both within the organisation but also externally as well.
Such a positive story, Kathy. I'm really enjoying hearing that, because it's not always the case that workplaces are so supportive and respectful. And I'm really curious as well, in your bio to me, you described that process of leaving as resigning, not retiring. You didn't say you retired from this role after 15 years. So I'm curious to know what words you do use to describe this phase.
Well, like you, because I've listened to some of your podcasts, I react to that word retirement mainly because there's so much prejudgment that people put into that word, depending upon the way they view retirement. And I really don't like the assumptions that go with it, that like things just stop, and that I react hugely to that sense of, you'll go off and you'll read books, or I don't know, you go and play golf or cards. It's just such it's anathema to me, that way of kind of operating, really. So I've never liked the word retirement, and sometimes I think is that me just not being willing to kind of acknowledge and face that I am in this different stage. But the words that I've used more have been this next phase or this next stage. Interestingly, I'm not sure I really enjoy even the use of the term the next chapter, but I note that when you did a survey, I think that came through quite strongly. To me, it is about life's full of phases and stages. And I mean, I guess that is what life's about. What are the transitions that we go through? How do we manage them? How do we learn? What's the challenges in each of them? This to me felt like quite a substantial transition, really moving from that setup where, it is when you've worked somewhere or you've been in something for 50 years, it really is part of your identity and part of your image, or for me it was anyway. And because I am someone who also thrives a bit on structure and doing, and in my own brain, achieving, may or may not be. And those things, the way I frame them, are important to me. It was also quite important to me that I look at how do I not completely eradicate structure from my life, but look at how do I build that, but maybe in a different way with different things. So anyway, I'm not that keen on the word retirement. I see it as just...
I can hear that. And you're in good company, Kathy, because neither am I. One of the things that Jane talked about was the importance of kind of visualizing and thinking ahead about what life beyond work looks like. And in a sense, she described it as making sure that we have something that we are leaving to rather than just something that we're leaving from or leaving behind. And I wonder what that was like for you, Kathy, in terms of how you thought about the period of time after when you returned from overseas.
I had, in a sort of very broad way, thought about some possibilities. I knew that there'd be some things that would continue and potentially grow. I mean, instance, the grandparenting bit, partly because there were more kids and more people were coming back to settle near where we lived. And I noticed myself looking around and finding possible examples of people who were doing things that either interested me or the way in which they went about this stage of their life really interested me. And so I was picking up bits and pieces of, well, what might I want to do? In my own mind, I had also thought, look, I want to be able to do a combination of things. I mean, obviously my family commitments are really important, but I thought, here's my opportunity. There are some areas I'm interested in and I want to be involved as a volunteer. And then I also thought, oh, wow, and this was my one. I'd always said to myself, because I learnt the cello when I was 10 years old or 12 years old or whatever that was for a few years, and then moved from that to be a bit more trendy and play the guitar, that sort of teenage thing. But I'd always said to myself, nah, when you finish work, why don't you take up cello again? Anyway, I decided I really wanted to explore that one too. And in fact, when I was over in London, I ended up hiring a cello and finding out, did anyone teach, quite old in the sense of hadn't done it for a long time, but knew a little bit about it. People just for a short period, and someone said yes. And so that was great. That actually gave me quite a lift to really be starting to do something quite new, pushed me a little bit out of my comfort zone. It started building a bit more into my image or sense of myself as being someone just a little bit different from the, more substantial work context I'd left. Anyway, point being, there were ideas that I had, and, I do think the time in UK, that was very absorbing. I mean, we also did travel and things, but it was a time for me to really reflect and start putting some potential stepping stones in place as well, so that when I came back, there were some things already in place that I wanted them to really pursue and see if something might emerge from them. Yeah.
Lots of my clients feel a bit fearful facing retirement or leaving work and what that next phase is going to be like, because they worry about endless days and with not much to do. And it sounds like you've kind of resolved that somewhat by thinking ahead about who, not just what you might do, but who you might be. I really liked your expression then about being slightly different to who you've been. What was it really like? Have there been times when you felt like there's not been quite enough to do? And how do you deal with that?
Yeah. It's an interesting one for me, Sue, because I'm so aware. I thrive on being busy, being directed in the sense that I want to do something, and I guess I want to achieve around that. I mean, people will call me a bit driven. I also wanted to be careful that I wasn't just totally replicating that, because, as in fact, I think my daughter had pointed out to me once, and, I really took it on board. What is that hiding? My need to be really, really busy or not? Is there something more deep-seated there that just means, what's getting in the way of me just completely stopping and being with myself or something? So I just wanted to be careful there. But over time, and so, sorry, there were some times when a day would come where there wasn't something, fully occupying the day that did make me feel, oh, what's this mean, and how do I want to go about it? But I also, and this is, you could argue this is not necessarily moving me forward, but I also took that on as a little bit of my own personal challenge. That, okay, this is how it is. How am I going to face it or embrace it, or, work with this in a way that I can have sometimes and get a bit more used to, where there's not structure. And obviously also give myself permission, because I love and thrive on structure, to have it there as well. The other thing that I sometimes felt was my partner, and it is a long-term partner, he is still working quite a lot in terms of paid work. And because he quite often does that from home, I was sometimes made more conscious of he's working, he's focused there. I can't just, let's do this, and or slightly constrained even within my own home around what I could do around something. So there were just some moments and times when that was just put into some kind of, highlighted for me a little bit more. But I think over time, it's a bit of an old saying, but it does happen. Things just get filled. And look, I have to say, Sue, right now, I am just so enjoying. There's so much opportunity. And I do need to preface this, if life isn't, we don't know, I don't know what life might throw up. And I am actually very aware that, particularly as you move into this decade of 70s and then on into 80s, time just is that much more, wow, it is just more finite. I don't know for how long, but it's like it's just something that grows more and more in my kind of almost background awareness of time might be quite short or it might not, and also I don't even know what the time ahead of me is necessarily going to look like if, as we know, things might happen physically or really important people or myself actually die, or things happen that just completely upset where I think I'm heading and how I think life wants to pan out. So I don't know, it's a really interesting thing because part of it makes me want to keep doing so much, making the most of the various opportunities or things or people that are happening in my life. And another part of me is wanting to make the most because I just feel increasingly aware that I can't know that we don't know. And that, for me anyway, that feels more pronounced than it did feel in my 50s or 60s, quite a lot more pronounced.
It's really, when you were talking, I was wondering if this awareness and the kind of the near close background noise or acknowledgement of that reality for you has been more pronounced since finishing work, or whether it was
it's a really good question.
Because I'm really struck that you worked until, how old were you when you retired?
Just before 70, like a month.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious about whether your sense of time changed after you finished work, but I'm also curious about it's not common for people to work until 70 and what drove that. But let's start with the first question first about has finishing work made a difference to how you think about or that sense of time?
I think it might a bit, yeah. It might feel, partly because it's like all these opportunities have also opened up, and almost which ones am I going to choose, and which are the things that I really want to make sure I can do if that's still available, because I just don't know how long time will. I don't know, maybe somehow I think it is more in my awareness, but it was definitely part of my awareness before I gave up work too, because that was part of my thinking, putting things in place ready to move on. And you said something about quite a lot of people don't necessarily wait until they're 70. Interestingly, I'm finding more and more people who do, and well beyond. But and this is a completely ageist thing as well. But I always remember being, working in the organisation, and maybe I was, I don't know, 60 or 55 or something, I'm not sure. And there was a woman there who was getting close to 70, and, one of the real leaders in the organisation. And I just always remember thinking, gosh, I want to make sure I'm gone by 70. I just thought, how, you don't want to be a has-been in a workplace either. Not that she was, it's just all these attitudes I myself brought to it. So anyway, it is why I thought as much as I maybe could continue in some ways, I didn't want to be perceived as a has-been. And that's a pure ego thing. as well, and it's ageist.
Yeah, it's complicated, isn't
Yeah,
it? You know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
I had a staff member who was in his 70s, or mid 70s actually, and people around me used to say all the time, "Are you talking with him about retirement?" And I was like, "No, I'm not. That's
Mm,
completely his decision. He's an
mm,
incredible asset to our organisation. The idea that we when we lose him, it will be a significant loss." So, yeah, really I was so struck by these increasingly regular conversations I was having about that staff member that were just embedded in that, baked into those questions was very ageist ideas. And so that on the one hand, and on the other hand, I have a partner who says they'll never retire because their sense of purpose and contribution is really important and
mm.
is experienced through and achieved through work. And it strikes me, given the sort of work that you've done and the way you're talking about life now, that purpose might have also been really important to you.
Yeah, yeah, it will always be. Purpose can happen in all sorts of ways for me, I think. It is, I mean, I keep talking about it, it is purposes, a partner in a relationship, purpose as a mother, purpose as a grandmother, purpose as kind of being there with friends as well. Um, and then there's purpose around kind of where and how I want to contribute in a civic way
Mm-hmm.
to the community or the society. So yeah, I think I need a sense of purpose or multiple senses of purpose, but I think yeah, I they can all be small p purposes,
Yes.
not just one overriding one. But your point you said something earlier around contribution. For me, I think that is really important. But again, I think contribution can happen in a whole range of ways,
Mm.
um, and it's just working out what make what contributes to me feeling like I'm contributing in ways that others benefit, and obviously I benefit from that as well. Yeah.
Well, it kind of takes us into the heart territory of your blog. And I wonder, can you tell us about your blog and what inspired you to start it?
Interestingly, I think, look, my one of my nieces had started a bit of a blog, and it was more around critiques and reviews of shows and books she'd been reading and things. And I'd just been quite impressed with her own initiative in getting that happening. And she happened to be living really close to where we were in London. Anyway, long story short, I thought, why not? I'm happy to give it a go. Because this sort of more personal journey was something I was conscious I wanted to understand more. I also thought I'm okay about sharing some of that with people. I do think, and obviously when you talk to people, it's something that resonates for a lot. And then I also thought, and I know I'm so useless around social media. I need to, there's going to be learning as well. Anyway, she helped, as did a couple of other uh, people, younger people, I have to say, younger people in my life. And we set it up. And yeah, it's a part of just a bit of exploring and just getting a little bit of insight in what that side of things, putting posts together, developing blogs, what you have with followers, all of that sort of thing. But it's just a part of what I'm doing. It's not something that I started off thinking, oh, I need to do it every week. Then I realized, no, people are going to get really bored with this if I do it every week. And also, that was putting quite a lot of pressure on me. So, and I thought, that's not my reason in doing. So now I might, well, look, it's oscillator. I haven't actually done it. I've got one just ready now. My last one was a month ago. But that is because I've been away and I've also been very busy and involved in other things. And again, I think that's one of the things that's happening to me, Sue. I'm giving myself permission more than I used to, it's okay not to meet this deadline if, Kathy, you're the only person that's imposing that deadline. Do you see what I'm saying? There's some of the shifts and the slight differences of things.
Yes, I do. And I relate, Kathy. I completely relate to that self-imposed pressure. So tell us a little bit more about the themes of your blog and what brought you to those.
Honestly, Sue, it's whatever's occupying me, either my thinking or what's going on in my life at that point. And where I just want to put something down about it.
And remind us the name of your
It's
Substack?
called Purposeful Transitions, and then there's a colon, living into later. Yeah.
Living to Later. Yeah.
Yeah. And, to that earlier point around next chapter, in fact, I thought, okay, this is my opportunity now to explore ChatGPT and what is that, and I put something in there around what are alternative titles, and interestingly, when the next chapter stuff came up for me, I thought, no, I don't actually want that. I looked at it and I thought about it, but no, it didn't. And anyway, where I've landed for me was something that sat comfortably enough for me in terms of a title for my blog.
So as you have continued to evolve and grow over these last couple of years since leaving work, how are other people responding to you? So your family, friends, and other people in your community?
Look, it's always so interesting. Family. Look, there's a part of some family members just kind of, assuming and taking for granted and putting their own interpretations on what I might be doing now. But often they don't necessarily ask; they just, assume. Some family members really encouraging me to explore a few things that I'm doing. Friends can really vary. There are those that have been very comfortable with this next stage for many years, and kind of almost, very quizzical, that I might have had a little bit of struggle with how do I want to reposition myself, and some that, are really fascinated with how I might be going about things. One of the things that I do feel quite strongly not for me, but I think for so many of us around, is I also think going forward, because we are living for a bit longer and because, as you've said, most people don't necessarily wait until they're 70 to retire. But I also think I don't mean it's incumbent on all of us, but I want those who want to kind of just provide possible examples of how people might move into this next phase in terms of what they do, how they do it, how they go about it, etc., etc. I think being able to, for others younger than me, to be able to look to people who are 10 years ahead of them and take the bits they want to emulate from that as well as the bits they don't. I think that's, I like it. I think it's important. And yeah, so
Yeah, I
I'm
think
not
so
sure if
too.
that's answered your question there, but
Yeah, look, I think it's really important that there are all
mm,
sorts of role models that
mm,
demonstrate a whole range of possibilities.
yeah.
So, if there was someone who was 10 years younger than you looking at where you are now, what things would you hope that they would take from your story?
I think what I hope they take is, look, here is someone who is clearly not perfect, but I'd like to think what they take from it is, on the other hand, here's someone who has always been open to almost a bit of adventure in my life. I, I probably again thrive on that a bit. I thrive a bit on just keeping my energy levels fairly up, and some of that comes from just pushing little boundaries within me occasionally, not every day at all, but just occasionally, to just show me either I can, or I can learn, or I can just see the world slightly differently as well. And where possible, I can lean in too. So I'd like to think, yeah, people saw someone who was able to do that. Yeah.
Hmm. If you could go back to Kathy 6 months before finishing work,
Hmm.
knowing what you know now about what life looks like on the other side, what would you say to her?
I think I'd say, for the moment, I'd say, wow, there is there is so much opportunity around us in whatever way I want to take that forward. And I mean that, yes, I've been lucky. I've had the opportunity to choose. I've got some financial backing. I've got really good relationships in life. But even for the moment, and connected in community, but even if that wasn't there, even if there's really some challenging circumstances, I still think there are opportunities that can be at least explored. um, and I really do, it would be something I would say, it can feel at times quite exciting to be in this stage. It can feel daunting, and but most of all, it feels increasingly precious. Yeah.
Increasingly precious. That's a really incredible perspective. I'm struck as well by some of the things that you just shared then about the exciting and challenging. Jane Moffat talks a bit about mindset, and I wonder when you've had difficult times or felt a little bit out of sync with yourself, what you've done in those moments to kind of bring yourself back to living your best life now.
Yeah. Yeah. um I look, I probably am more an optimist anyway. I do find that getting out and being physically active can kickstart me from, if I'm feeling in a bit of, like, feeling in a bit of a frump. I do thrive a bit on some endorphin hits. And that
Yeah.
just puts me, it just clears my mind. I mean, it is really critical to my mental health. And just it just helps me to see things a bit differently. And as soon as that happens, the opportunity or the potential starts showing itself again in terms of this is how I might be able to take it forward, or this is how I think I need to just reframe this, or something along those lines. So, but, there are definitely times I can feel, not very happy or, or cranky, probably at myself, but I'll put it on to someone, no doubt. Yeah.
Mm, mm. And so when you think about the next 2 years ahead,
Mhm.
what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah. Look, I have plans, but whether or not they all happen, or one or two, I do I do want to keep going with the cello.
Hmm.
Like to join, and I'll be one of those people sitting right at the back, a little community orchestra. I thought I'd like to do that. Um, I want to continue doing this work that I've started at the Ethics Centre, where I train to be this what they call the helpline counsellor for people who are really struggling with decision making or some ethical tensions within a decision they have to make. And, that is a real learning and growth opportunity for me as well. I want to keep going while I can with all the physical pursuits I pursue. I want travel and exploration. And I do want to, where I can, do little pieces of work that bring me a little bit of income. Sometimes I think, look, even if that can help pay towards our food bill for the year, that there's something about having a little bit of income coming in that isn't just linked to the superannuation a bit. I don't know, something about agency around that I think I have found really difficult to give up, and I just want to be able to, and it won't necessarily last for long, but I want to have that happening. And also by doing pieces of work that connects me again with people in a work context, I have to say, it also is a good thing to keep some of my tech skills a little bit more alive. Yeah, and I quite like going back because I am working. The pieces of work at the moment that I'm doing are linked to the organisation I was working for. I have always wanted, and that was almost part of my original thinking around getting the blog going, because of the context in which I have worked, and that was a not-for-profit that was very focused around relationships in all sorts of guises, and both what facilitates them and how do you address conflict and things like that. I do want to explore, because I've done some coaching before as well, and just my background's in counselling and welfare and social services. I do want to explore taking that into being available for people who are at this later stage of life and are finding this transition difficult, not just for themselves, but it's thrown up struggles in the important relationship or relationships they've had in life, and where there is a misfit with how one person's wanting to take things forward to their other person. And I have seen around me where that can be a massive struggle for some people. So anyway, my particular differentiator there is, and really focusing on both the impact this has on those important relationships and how navigating that as well. So that's something else I'd like to do. And then,
From my perspective and what I see in my practice, it's a really important work that you're considering doing. And just in terms of the sort of life and that you've just laid out in front of all of us for what you see in your future, it's what I would think of as a really fully flourishing life, from all of the different aspects of well-being that you are nurturing in your own life. It's you're a beautiful example of what it looks like to flourish in your 70s. And so in finishing, I always ask if there was one thing you could change about how society sees women over 50, what would it be? And I'm curious about your answer to that, but given what you've just said, I wonder as whether there's something that you'd like to change about how society sees women over 70 as well.
it is for people not to see it as a closing down. It's the opposite. It just feels like there's so much that can be opened up, and really it is about exploration, and exploration to me is also about adventure. And so it's for society to just see it as, yeah, this is really about opportunity. Aren't we lucky if we can enable that? And how can society therefore enable that as well?
Kathy, thank you. Thank you for being my guest today on Flourish After 50. I've really appreciated the perspective that you've brought. As someone who's deeply reflective, you know yourself well, and you've brought self-knowledge to our conversation today. So I'm sure that women who are listening and thinking about retirement, or are in retirement and thinking about how they want it to be different, will really benefit from our conversation here today.
Sue, I've loved talking with you, and you're very easy to talk to. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity as well.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Flourish After 50. If today's conversation resonated and you're ready to take the next step, you can work with me one-on-one as your coach, join my 6-week Life on Your Terms program, or be part of a monthly discussion group where we get deeper into some of the topics on this podcast, the Flourish After 50 Circle. You'll find the details and links at flourishafter50.com.au or in the show notes. I'd also love your support. Follow the show on your favourite podcast app, share this episode with a friend, and leave a review. It helps more women discover Flourish After 50 and start their own journey towards what's next. Thank you for listening and for giving yourself the space to be curious about all the possibilities that lie ahead for you. This episode was recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present.